Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Boring Enterprise Nerdcast. Today, I'm your host, Elena Perfilieva, and with me is my usual co-host, Paul Moderman. Please say hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
And we have a returning guest today, which I'm very excited to talk to, Jamie Langskov. Please say hi, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
So since our last conversation, Jamie's role has changed a little bit, and Jamie is a community-driven growth consultant for product-led startups. Sorry, Jamie, it's a mouthful for me. So we talked in our last podcast to Jamie about community. She's a really great community expert, and we go back into the days of SAP. And if you're interested in community, please go back and watch that previous podcast as well, because it was, I think, really great conversation about community. And we will have link for our YouTube watchers and everyone on the podcast audio platforms can find it as well. So welcome back, Jamie. And I'm really excited to talk today. We have a special theme continuing from our last conversation. So today's subject is what I loosely call lady issues, to talk about everything that affects women, their rights, their role in IT, in community, etc. So I'm very excited to talk about this today. So let's just dig into our conversation. So Jamie, as I mentioned, you had different role last time we talked to you. Do you want to give us update of like what's happened previously in the in our series?
Yeah, so gosh, it's been a minute. I have been also going through the churn that some other folks have been going through right now with all of the tech layoffs going on. So I found myself trying to figure out what was next for me and realized that there was a real need in the startup environment for somebody to help some of these founders figure out how to start a community-led growth motion early on. And so that's where I'm focused now, and I'm running my own business and working with some great founders, and it's a whole different world from being in enterprise, but it's exciting and I'm really enjoying it right now.
Awesome.
And thank you for having me back. I am really excited for this.
Oh,
today.
more than welcome. It's always great to talk to you. So if anyone out there looking for any community related help, then Jamie's great expert on this subject, and I can think of better person to talk to. So please,
yeah.
Thank you.
We forgot to mention this podcast brought to you by Jamie Langskov, community growth consultant for product and service.
Sponsored by.
Back to you, Elena.
Awesome. So I'm the oldest lady in the group, I thought it might be appropriate if I just give maybe just a short overview of the last couple of decades of movement about women rights and life of women and everything. And I did a couple of articles on the subject. One of my earliest posts was on SAP community, and it was me reflecting back on living in the USSR, where women were treated very differently from men, and not in a sense that, sorry, not differently for men, but rather like how women are treated in the United States at the same time. Because when I moved to the United States in 2000, I saw very drastic shift in how suddenly attitudes toward me are, and that kind of affected my own feeling about myself to the extent. And in the USSR, I think historically, Communist Party really did understand the importance of women in their movement, so that there is a lot of history there, but also purely just historically after the war, as we know, World War II, many men just have died, and it was on women. Like my grandma was from that generation, who had to rebuild the country. They had to raise the children. They had to, handle everything after war. So that's why I think women had really bigger respect, and it was just very natural to me to see a woman in any role, to see her as a director of big enterprise or big like factory or something, but also to work at any place, like anything that even perceived as traditionally men's roles, that women would just be there because there would be physically no men to fill in those roles. So that to me also kind of highlights that thing, that all that division into what men do, what women do, is mostly artificial. So when one of the genders suddenly disappears in large numbers, see how things change. So I think there is a lot to learn and a lot to dig in, maybe for historians. But most recently, I think, first of all, in 70s, I have been watching some shows that are really fascinating about telling stories about women in 70s who started this whole movement about women having equal treatment at work. And it was great, I think, shift in women's rights. And then later on, the next, probably the most significant movement was Me Too. And I'm just really glad it happened. I think other maybe things like ageism and other issues, they also need their own Me Too. But specifically for women, I think it was great. I mean, it was terrible that bad things were happening, but it was great that we finally came to acknowledge that it was happening, and specifically that women rose together to talk about this openly. So I think it was just awesome, and I'm glad for women of the next generations who will live after that. So I hope for them it would be as big step as what women did back in 70s was for me. So that's just my little soapbox speech. Jamie or Paul, what do you think about this?
So, well, first of all, for me as a non-woman, thank you for that historical perspective, because Yelena, I had no idea that in your experience, you literally got to see a cultural shift of this stuff just by traveling across an ocean, basically, right? That you probably see by my face, you were blowing my mind as you were telling me about this stuff here, about of course, the USSR suffered huge men losses during the war, and that drastically had an impact. Of course, I never thought about it that way, though, right? So as I hear, I think the contribution that I want to make to this is, like, as somebody who doesn't have personal stories in this space, the more stories I hear of people who have a direct personal impact with women in the workplace, the better I am equipped to hear the perspectives more and more, right? So similar to that, and also, like, my wife does a great job of challenging me on things and saying, by the way, did you hear what you just said? How that assumed a man? Or how what you just said assumed this and this? And, like, at first I was like, oh, God, leave me alone. But then I realized I do it with, like, everything I do. So I get this long-winded way of saying stories like what you just said, Yelena, are even though the focus isn't on me, it's helpful to me to hear that stuff. So I want to thank you, and of course Jamie as well, for telling those things, because the people who need to make a change, like, part of that stuff is us sort of accepting that into our brains to make that change too. So those stories are helpful. They really are.
I think that there is an overwhelming desire in a lot of, especially people in power, and I'm gonna get a little bit non-PC because that's how we roll.
Do it.
But frankly, like, a lot of white folks want to pretend that slavery was so long ago, and we've come so far, and women have the same rights as we do as men, and I don't understand why this is such a problem still. Well, I think they also don't understand how recently some of these things have even begun to surface. I mean, not every state in this country, in the US, banned spousal rape until 1993. You could really not expect any legal action against sexual harassment in the workplace until 1977. And that's what I was doing while you were talking, was trying to pull up some of these to make sure that my dates were correct. But I mean, if you think about just something as basic as owning property, yeah, women were expected to step into the workplace in World War II, but they couldn't get their own credit until 1974.
74, that's nuts.
Yeah.
And until 1978, women could still get fired for being pregnant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you nailed it when you said that the 70s is really when we started to see some of these changes get at least put into law, but that doesn't mean that they are in effect actually being upheld all over the place. I think that we see people all the time who are coming up against this stuff at work, at home.
It's not like problem solved, you know. We have a law, that's it. Everything is fine.
Especially when that is the mindset of like, we don't talk about these things. They're uncomfortable. And I'm personally offended as a dude that you want women's rights. Like, are you one of those people that's creating the problem? If yes, you have other issues. If no, why are you offended right now?
It's funny how I still hear, you know, informally, of course, or just random posts online, like, oh, this feminism, like, it's like rampage. It's like, it's too much, like, offend. Like, do you realize that feminism, it's a movement about women's rights? It's about women's having the same rights as other people. That's all there is. It's not connected to anything else. It's people just get, I don't know, confused, and you know, the stupid term like feminazi or something, that's just dumb. So thank you, Jamie, for that perspective. So talking about comfortable, non-comfortable. So since we mentioned, I think, a few times in this podcast that you're a community expert, I wanted to talk to you, what can community organizers do and community members themselves to make communities online or in real life to be safe place for women and everyone for that matter. So as a community expert, please, I would like really to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah. So there are some very discreet things that you can do as a community leader and even just as a power user in a community. I have a whole separate talk about this. I'll put the link and we can share it in the YouTube as well. But the bottom line is you have to make rules in partnership with your community that you then enforce transparently. And that's the full gist of it. Basically, you're going to write up a code of conduct, ideally with your community members. And this could be for in-person events. It could be your online community, regardless. And everybody has to be held accountable to those rules that we as a community agreed upon, that this is how we're going to do things here. Now, once those are in place, you need to be transparent with how you are enforcing those rules. Here are specifically the steps that we took with regards to an issue that was raised to us. And, you know, that person who caused the problem was either temporarily removed, they were banned, they were not allowed to speak on stage, whatever it was, such that the rest of the community feels safe to raise those issues and know that they will be taken seriously. And I think an important thing there really is the transparency, because if you say, don't worry, we're taking care of it, how much faith do we as traditionally victimized people in these situations, how are we supposed to have faith in that anymore? Having seen how some of the more well-known offenders, we'll say, especially in tech communities, have been sort of let off the hook for being just awful to other people because they knew they could get away with it. So I think that's a critical component of creating that psychological safety is, here are the rules, here are the consequences, here's how we enforced them. And then as a power user, somebody who is a respected voice in the community, the most powerful thing you can do to protect that culture and make it safe for other people is, I learned this elsewhere, and I will go look up where it came from, but it's one of my favorite quotes for community building. And it is, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
It's not, you're a bad person, go away. It's not, that action is morally offensive to me. It is simply, we don't do that here.
Yeah,
You
was
want to
it
go
from
be
that?
awful somewhere else?
Was it from Black Panther that says like meme? But I don't know if it's that's where I hear it. We have that like I use it all the time. I think it's a great approach to put we behind the statement, because then you stand up. It's not just me speaking like Elena speaking like I don't like it, because like, well, you don't like it, tough, it's just you, but making important that it's a community stand, and we will stand collectively for that and support each other. That's very important.
I've been
Yeah.
listening. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Yelena.
No, it would have to be like super that you feel. I just saw, I saw on videos that Paul was making his like thinking face. So yeah, please go ahead, Paul.
I'm like so transparent when I something gets stuck in my head.
You have a light bulb that just
I need to like have my
Yeah.
background like change to a little light bulb that goes up there. So I was thinking about like even before you said even before that great phrase, we don't do that here. I was thinking about the concept of community as like, so like each individual person in a community, of course, has an identity of their own with all kinds of characteristics, right? But communities themselves have identities, right? There's an identity that comes with whatever community you're participating in, whether it's virtual or physical or whatever. And this idea of we don't do that here, I think also helps you sort of say, I, as a person interacting with this community, I can almost like mentally approach that as like I'm interacting with a person. It's not a human, but it's a person in a sense, right? And what we're saying now is this person that you're interacting with doesn't accept that, doesn't allow that, right? It is that person's value that XYZ is not, that shit is not cool here, right?
And that's why I say when you set up your initial guidelines, your boundaries that you're putting in place for the community, you're making a decision about the kinds of cultural norms that you all agree are acceptable and appropriate for this environment. And that's going to be very different if it's, the SAP community or another professional community versus like Ravelry, which is, knitting and, oh God, I'm going to get the knitters on me.
We can hit that big knitter demographic.
The cultural norms are going to be different there. And it is really truly based on what are the expectations of the members and what is the expectation of whoever is, if it's a hosted community or if it's, an open source community, those expectations are going to be different, but you all need to come together around, okay, what are the things that are important to us? What are our values? What are our shared values? And how do we then codify that such that we can enforce it later and say, you know what? We're welcoming. We'd love to have you here, but we don't do that here. So if you want to participate, here's the appropriate way to approach that.
I think it's great pointer to all the community members and organizers alike. So we had a chat with Paul just yesterday, and I mentioned the thing that I call death by 1,000 paper cuts. And it goes a little bit back, Jamie, to what you said about having a law, but then actually solving the issue and upholding that law for that matter, or changing our mindset. That's a totally different story. So we just talked yesterday about all the little things that are, if you look at each one of them, they're like little tiny things which you would think, well, it's a big deal, you just move on. But there are so many of them that either over time or even on a single day, it just grinds you down and it's just brings you down. So I'm curious if, so for me, for example, it can be sometimes like, for example, like posts that are made on, some communities on social media, etc., where you get a response and you are kind of thinking like, if I had different like name and profile picture, would that response be different? Would someone say things to me if I was a man? Would they still say those things? Would they even dare to post something like that? Because and then some people say, well, why are you so focused on it? Just move on. Just don't think about it. But that's a thing. I really, I can't. because it is a fact that that we're different, that women and men still, and I see it not just about myself, I see it about others. I still see people responding in completely different ways. And there have been even studies, for example, when it comes to resumes at work, when people submit the resume, there have been studies made when you take the same text, you put male sounding name on it, and result of the review, whether a person gets an interview or not, it can be different, which I think is just horrible.
I've seen some interesting commentary a little while back about interviews themselves as well. Like interviewers, especially at some of the bigger tech companies, would intentionally make the interview harder for either a non-white person or a female presenting person. And it was just very unapologetic. Like, of course I do that. When did we decide that was okay? Where did you get that head face from?
It's even worse than that when I think it's maybe getting less of that, thankfully, but there definitely was an issue with even women being harsher to other women, and their kind of reasoning for that was, well, women have it tougher than men, so I'm going to be tough on you to harden you in some way. Or I honestly, it's that logic. I've heard it several times, but it's still kind of mind-boggling to me. Like, why would like you as a woman do that to another woman? That's
it's harder on them. Why are you making it even harder? It's that internalized patriarchic sort of mindset. And honestly, I have actually seen more toxic female executives punching down to lower female ICs and managers than males. And my theory on this is that they have had to go through so much trauma and so much probably things that they're not proud of, like stepping on other people and fighting and clawing to get where they are, that they're terrified of either being discovered as an imposter. So, I mean, there's that imposter syndrome piece of it, or that they're worried that someone that's coming up under them who is a high performer is a threat. Instead of, this person's on my team, they're making me look good because we're getting stuff done. And so I think that is, I mean, let's be real. They need therapy. They need to deal with that trauma and that insecurity such that they can be a healthy advocate for their teams, as opposed to constantly throwing their team members under the bus. And it happens women to women all the time.
It's Paul, any thoughts on that?
Fear is like the most powerful drug inside your head, right? In terms of like a motivator for doing a behavior that either you think is good or not so good. Like let me try to be circumspect about this. I've stood in circles of people or been around people who discuss either an issue like we're talking about now or a related social justice issue. And you can see a moment when someone says something a little untoward, right? A little where they even understand that people would be like, should that be said out loud ever at all? Like that kind of a thing. And like you start to think about it, and you even analyze yourself a little bit and say, okay, wait, when I have said something untoward, what was behind that? And like, I think fear is the thing. Fear that you yourself will be displaced or put aside or found to be not as good as you thought you were, right? There's I I guess to be maybe less circumspect, there's a lot of mediocre white men going around. And then I almost have this fear like, ah, shit, am I a mediocre white guy, right? Have I like did me go running ahead of the starter pistol, right? Has that made me like I feel great about who I am, but is everyone behind me like going, oh, that effing guy, what is with him? Right? But then when I see, oh, that causes fear inside me, then I can go, oh, now I'm starting to see why people punch backwards, right? Is because of fear of whether it's gender, sexuality, whatever the case may be. They see that like punching backwards or punching down is a direct indicator of your own insecurity, right? Yeah, it just hearing you guys talk about this stuff too, it just like I said, keeps helping me sort of internalize and reprocess thoughts of my own on this stuff.
I love that you're having this conversation with us though, because something that Elena said earlier about it being women and this difference in how we communicate with each other is really critical to making any changes here. We have to have white men in the room. We have to have cishet, well-off, well-educated white men in the room who get it and who will then speak up for the others who are not being listened to, who are not being heard, whose opinion is not valued as highly, to say, hey, what you just said, that was not cool.
Yeah.
We don't do that here.
Yeah. That we don't do that here is like, that's such a, like, I wish that I could go back at times and challenge people better just by using that phrase. Because like, it's like, that is a compact, powerful thing that is sometimes more able to sort of poke somebody rather than trying to sort of dive
the argument.
Yeah.
There is no like, oh, well, I don't see what the problem is. Why are you upset? It doesn't affect you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's just, you know what? Not interested in the argument. We just don't do that here.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Like, we don't do that here is not a doctoral dissertation. It's just a statement of the state of things. And it's harder to write a response dissertation to a thing that's not a dissertation anyway. So yeah, carrying forward from this conversation is, for me, is that phrase right there for sure.
Yeah. So the things we're talking about, it's about allyship. It's about how to be a good ally to women. And I think that's we have talked about issues for a while, so maybe we can talk about some solutions as well, if possible. To me, just like you said, the principle, see something, say something, it's very important, because there have been cases, for example, when someone something, let's say again, some kind of comment is made that is pretty offensive, and it's clearly related to gender, but then someone reach out to me personally, like through some private channels, like, yeah, I saw that, yeah, sorry, like you had to hear that, but but why you're in the same space? Why do you not just kind of stand up and say, hey, not cool, or the same, like, we don't do that here? So I think that's the most powerful thing, and men frequently asking that question, like, what can I do to help the situation? Well, you can kind of rein in other men for us. That would be super helpful, because if me as a woman getting into argument with a guy, that's totally different than another guy telling that person, you know what, yeah, you need to chill, bro, you need to do things differently. So
because if you argue, then you're just hysterical.
Exactly.
And
you're
angry.
You're hysterical. You're like, I need to. Yeah.
Like, Elena, why are you being such a bitch? Honestly.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Is it?
down.
Yeah. Do you have
down.
a PMS? Yeah. Are you on your period? Like, what's going on there? Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's yeah.
Ugh.
But that's.
I've decided that joining tech helped me to really develop my resting bitch face.
You should, Jamie, by the way, you should have like Jamie Langskov, comma RBF, like as your like
It's part of my credentials.
right? So people can be like, what does RBF mean? And then you can go, well, what it is, and like just tear it down right there. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm curious if you have Jamie or even Paul, if you have any tips on that. I think the things that people are frequently uncomfortable with is making compliments, and I can give you one, or even a couple of stories from my experience. It was a few years ago. I was on random morning at Panera Bread. I was dressed up to go to the office at that time when it's the good old days when we went to the office, and I had a sweater and a very nice, very colorful scarf. My friend from India brought it, and it just happened to have like the same color schema as my sweater. So it was just perfect, arrangement, not intentional, but it just was a gift from a friend. So I was just wearing it and just having a good time in the morning, picking my stuff. And the man behind me, and he started with like, well, I don't know if these days we're allowed to make compliments, but I want to say that, your scarf looks like really nice. So I really appreciate the compliment, but I think that preamble, like, I don't know if we're allowed, that kind of brought it
Yeah,
down
like
just undermined the thing you were about to
I
say.
would say like I don't know if you're gonna be offended, lady, like that. So I think from my tip, like how to make compliments would be, if it's something really heartfelt, if it's coming from the right place, if you feel like, well, I see this person really, they put some skill into arranging their wardrobe in this color schema that looks really nice to me, then I think that's exactly what you can say without having any kind of disclaimers. It's at the bottom, like that you don't mean to offend. If it's something that maybe, I think, first of all, do not compliment something that people were born with. It's such a lousy compliment. Oh, you have like, long legs. Women have been like, nice boobs. That's just the worst example of it. But so
Thanks.
many
I
of
tried
them.
really hard with them this morning.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
I've been working on them.
Yeah, I had to go through puberty to get them. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank
It's been a
you.
long road, but
Yeah,
here we go.
nice.
You know, the
Nice
way
to-
I would think about it, because a lot of people don't have that ability to judge, and that's why they're in this space of being, I don't know, offended that we don't want to be
Yeah.
objectified at work. But Paul, I'm going to pick on you for a minute.
Do it.
Boys, if you would say it to Paul, it's okay to say it to your female coworker.
Yeah.
If you're going to compliment his lovely beard, that's okay, as long as you do it in a way that's not like weirdly sexual at work.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like as I reflect on that, that would be really weird. Like and nobody has ever, thank goodness, about my beard in that way. But in all seriousness, that like a preamble like that toward a beard or a bald head or whatever kind of guy thing, that would like deflate the thing itself. That like, oh, that's don't just it's just my beard. That's not another
Like, it's okay
whatever.
to say, hey,
Yeah.
Paul, I really like your shirt today.
Yeah.
That's not weird. That's not
Yeah.
awkward or inappropriate or uncomfortable. So if you can say it to Paul, you can say it to Elena.
Elena, I was chuckling earlier when you were talking to because you were you were describing somebody saying that like, and I think maybe the safest way would be to say, Elena, the way that you have arranged your wardrobe today, both in color and in cut, is shows incredible aesthetic forethought, and I appreciate that. Right, that would be
Awesome.
like well shaped and rounded, just like
make it
perfectly-
academic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
make it very
exactly.
academic. Make it very dry, and there
Yeah.
you go. Right.
Awesome. Great guidelines. So do you guys have any like quick tips on any lady issues?
Yeah, so I think I want to go back to, you mentioned, how can people be good allies? And I think there's two critical things that need to happen for cultural changes like this to happen. And that is, one, the accountability we talked about before. So if you are in a room where something inappropriate happens with a colleague or with anybody, you have a responsibility to speak up, and it is more powerful for one dude to hold another dude accountable in this modern culture. So that's one. The second one is the language, how we talk about each other, how we talk about women versus men. And we touched on that a little bit as well. You know, the words that we use to describe someone's behavior or their personality or things that are not inherently gendered change depending upon whether we're talking about a man or a woman. And I think that the more conscious we are about how we talk about each other and how we talk to each other, not just the very explicit things, but the more like the microaggressions, the things that are more subtle, but they are definitely still just as deep, cutting to the person that you're talking about. You know, a couple of examples. One, when I was trying to sell our home in Kansas many years ago, my husband had already moved to the Bay Area and he was working. So I was there trying to take care of selling the house and getting the move all situated and all that. And this realtor came over and he said, you know, he starts asking me questions and I'm trying to kind of follow along and give him the information he needs. And I was an MBA student at the time, so it wasn't like I was oblivious.
Yeah.
But there were things that, you know, this was my first house. I didn't know really what I was doing, but neither did my husband.
Yeah.
And the realtor literally sat there and asked me, you know, is your husband around?
Oof.
You know what? Actually, no, he's not. And the thing that my husband could have done in that situation, if the realtor had called him, would have been, you know what? My wife's handling this, so you're going to need to talk to her. If you can push back, that helps. You know, hold the barrier. And then the last thing I want to say is a lot of times we get spoken over in meetings or our ideas are ignored until they come from someone else. And so sometimes being an echo to someone who is not being heard, and instead of just repeating it, but saying, hey, you know, Elena had a great idea. What if we do this? Now suddenly everyone's listening and you've given credit to the person who brought up the idea in the beginning. I had an issue several years ago where I had suggested that the team use this collaboration tool. And I said, you know what, this is really simple. You know, it's a great tool. It'll help us get more aligned. And I was kind of told, you know, that's too much work. We don't want to deal with that. And then probably 8-10 months later, a male colleague suggested the same thing. And it was like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. We should definitely do that. Let's start implementing it now. And I'll be honest, I lost my shit in that meeting. And my boss at the time was like, I don't understand why you're so upset. You know, it doesn't matter whose idea it was, you know, the team's going to benefit. And I was like, okay, I get that I'm supposed to believe that it doesn't matter whose idea it was, but let's be honest with each other for a hot minute.
Yeah.
But it just did. It just
does.
mattered.
It does matter.
Yeah, right there. It just mattered.
And then when come review time, performance review time, it's going to matter because you're going to say, wow, that person, he did all of this great stuff to improve the team. And you're really not pulling your weight around here. You know, what do you do in that instance? So it's really on, we can only yell so loud until we just start being ignored. And so it's really on the allies around us who do have some pull, who do have influence to speak up for us. And that's why one of my big things is sponsorship over mentorship. You know, you should be putting yourself out there to elevate someone else as opposed to just sitting in the background and going, well, really, you should have done this better. That doesn't help me. I need somebody who can be there to say, you guys are not listening. This is what's happening. You need to listen to your colleague here who's trying to talk to you.
Yeah. And I think like you mentioned about compliments, it's like the same thing that you can tell to Paul, then the same thing you can tell to me or another woman. And I think it's a great guideline because many times I hear like from men, oh, you know, gee golly, all this women stuff is just making my life so difficult. like, oh, I need to be so sensitive these days. It's like it's hard, it's so hard to think about like how we treat women the same, as equals. I mean, like, like, wow, okay, that's
They're using it as an excuse to not hire and not mentor
yeah,
female employees now.
yeah,
And it's like, that's not the solution here.
yeah. I mean, it's not hard though. So you already have like men. You have Paul. So it's not harder to talk to Paul to me than to talk to Paul for that matter. So I think that's manufactured difficulties that women create somehow by existing. I think that's a whole the whole different issue. Whew. All right. So yeah, it's a great great moment. So
Shake that off a little bit.
yeah.
Carrying some rage from before,
yeah. So
there's no trauma here. No trauma.
So before we go to our closing arguments, I just wanted to touch briefly on recent news about tech layoffs. And for his historical perspective, both Jamie and myself, we were affected by layoffs. Myself earlier, and Jamie most recently. I was laid off in the middle of pandemic, and it wasn't part when tech companies were laying off people massively, but layoffs are nothing new. It's just, I think, the scale to which they're happening at the same time that is rather unusual for the current events. But overall, this really toxic mass layoffs, it's just, it's awful thing. But at the same time, they are also approaching women and other groups who are maybe at disadvantage. I think sometimes more disproportionately comparing to men and more fortunate groups. So Jamie, what do you want to share anything about this?
Yeah, I think what has been most disconcerting to me is to see the number of people who have been out on parental leave, bereavement leave. They're out dealing with family issues, and they find out while they're on leave that they've been let go.
Yeah.
That's a major problem to me. I suspect that we're going to see data down the road that is going to show how disproportionately people in those situations, as well as like folks in DEI roles and folks in very people-focused areas, which is proportionately more female represented, have been laid off as well. And so I don't know what the longer term implications of this are. One thing that I do hope is that the traction that we've made as workers in tech, especially over the last few years, with remote work and flexible arrangements and the things that very deeply impact female workers in particular, because we are more heavily representing the caregiver role, that we don't lose those things. Because I think that what we're seeing right now is a big flex on the part of large tech companies right now, where they're saying, you know what, y'all have become a little too demanding. We're going to show you exactly how important and special you are. And we're just going to let go thousands and thousands of people all at once so that nobody can say we're doing it in any fashion that is problematic. I have a lot of thoughts on this layoff situation as far as, the impact on the economy and things like that. But I think the impact on women, and especially non-white women, is going to be devastating to some people. And I mean, we're in the middle already of a childcare shortage, of major healthcare issues. We're going to have a ton of people who suddenly don't have health insurance because we tie health insurance to the workplace here. It's going to be devastating for a lot of families.
Yeah, if anyone is, and it's always such a blow to one's self-esteem, because this mass layoffs, they just can affect anyone. And naturally you would, if you're affected, you would start questioning yourself, what did I do wrong? And I can tell you most likely nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. And as a matter of fact, You might have been just the most awesome person on the team, the most, the biggest expert. It's never about that. It's just a numbers game. You're just a number to those big corporations. So you don't owe them anything, and you're great. Of course you will feel like a gut punch, but it's not about you. It's just, yeah. But next time when let's say you're making your employment choices, it is definitely something that to consider. And I'm just thinking about long-term effects. We have already seen this anti-war kind of movement, and all those, marketing tries to use a term like quiet quitting, or global, what was it, another one. I think we will see effects down the road of all those massive layoffs, and I think they will be better for the people, and they will not be better for the corporations at all.
Yeah, I think that the corporations are definitely shooting themselves in the foot right now.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that were always considered like safe bets.
Yeah.
You pay really well, your job's secure.
Yeah.
Now
Dream
all of a sudden,
job.
nobody's safe.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Paul, any thoughts about that?
I think just one other thing that I kind of would take away too, I think, is that like if you are one of the people who may be affected by that or could be in the future, is that at any time in your career or whatever, when you have the chance to make an investment in something, invest in yourself, invest in your own skills and your own, markability, or invest in your own time to not be working. Like, frankly speaking, no big corporation deserves any more than the time that they pay you for. Anything above and beyond that should be making you, the person, better for your own life. Do not give Google, Microsoft, whatever, do not give them 110%. Give them what they ask for, and the rest goes to you.
I love that.
And your family and your friends and whatever like that. Like, it's like long term, it won't, like, I was stupid as a young person in tech-ish land when I first graduated college. I was so dumb, and I gave all of that extra juice to like my employer, and it didn't matter. It didn't get me anywhere. It didn't, like, that's not, like, my employer certainly did not morally deserve it any more than, like, my family and myself deserved that extra time, effort, energy, whatever, and I didn't give it to them, and that was just not right.
I love that because, well, I don't love that part, but I love what you're saying about, giving exactly what you're giving, what they're paying for.
Yeah.
And there was a concept that I took to heart several years ago of the company of one. You are a company of one, regardless of whether you work on salary, you're a consultant, you're a part-time contractor, whatever. You are selling your time. And so you should be mindful of how much time you're selling for how much money. And if you work more than the company expects you to, or than you feel is appropriate for, the contract you have in place, you're giving away your time or you're reducing your hourly wage. And when you start to think about it that way, you realize, okay, maybe this actually isn't in my best interest to continue to grind myself to the bone.
Trust me, it's not. Trust me, it's not.
It's not. And,
not.
One of the reasons that I switched into this consulting mode was because I told my husband, look, we need to diversify our income. We cannot be in this position again. I refuse to be in the position again where one person's decision that I have no control over can leave us. I'm the sole provider in my house. I have 3 children. Like, we cannot be in this situation again. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start doing some things for myself. And we're going to get it to a point where if something doesn't work out, that's okay. And I can rely on the other things to keep us going, because we've gotten into this mode, again, back to healthcare, where as a country, we depend so heavily on our employers to provide our livelihoods. And that's bananas. I hope that people are seeing now how crazy that is. And random shout out, but first disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a financial advisor.
Mhm.
But one thing I realized when I had to switch off of my company's insurance at the end of last year, Cobra is ridiculous. It was
Yeah.
going
Cobra
to cost over
sucks.
Yeah, it's
3
awful.
grand to keep my family of 5 a month insured. Go to the marketplace, take advantage of that. Do not pay for Cobra if you don't have to.
Yeah.
No.
That's my random learning through this process.
Oh, thank you. Listeners, listen to Jamie. That's, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, that's definitely. Yeah. And I have, and it's I mean, it's a whole huge issue, I think, of healthcare in the United States. To me personally, to be honest, I hope that might be resolved by the time I reach retirement age. Maybe there might be some improvements. I don't know. One can hope. But honestly, it's just gotten so bad. I'm considering when I just completely retire from IT, years down the road, I'm thinking I will just make this my sole life purpose, just to ensure that everyone has free healthcare, because it's been, and it has such an effect. Exactly. I mean, like you said, people do not speak up because they're afraid, and people are asking, well, things are so bad in the United States, why you don't try it on the streets? That's why, because everyone is afraid to lose their job, because they will lose insurance, they will use healthcare, and then you're going to get bankrupt if you break a leg, like literally. So that's ball and chain, but that's a huge topic. So
I was
slightly.
going to say, my other healthcare hacks,
Yeah.
one, most providers have a cash rate that's separate from their insurance rate, so always ask. And
Yeah.
two, most major hospitals are also charitable organizations, so they have to have a set of their revenue set aside to essentially write off people who cannot pay. So they want to work with you. They want to give you a financial plan. So if you find yourself in that situation, please dig deeper. Do not go first to lighting yourself on fire to keep other people warm.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back with healthcare tips from Jamie Langskov.
This has been a journey.
Yeah. I could go on forever on that subject alone. And I don't know, maybe we should, but that would be like very specific to the United States. People in many other countries they're like, what are they talking about right now?
We're gonna do a whole separate episode on just
just healthcare.
US
bullshit.
US bullshit. All right. So we have been talking for a while. We usually try to close with some fun games that we do with our guests, and we had great success, I think, doing this Kiss, Marry, Kill game. And to those who are listening for the first time, for some reason, I will explain that the nature of this game is kiss. It's something that you would just have a short fling with, and then very quickly separate. Marry, obviously, something that you would stay for a long time or have lasting relationship with, and then kill, obvious, something that you would like to go away. So keeping kind of with our theme of this podcast episode and our tech affiliation, I think we can pick tech culture, either directly related to lady issues or not, as our subject for our Kiss, Marry, Kill pick. So we will do Kiss first and then Marry then other. So I will start first with my Kiss choice. I would say lady quota or anything related to that in IT is something, I'm not sure if it's really Kiss material too, but I'm grateful that it might have helped some help to hire more women in IT, to get more women in IT. But it's not something that should be the thing. There should not be quotas for women. It simply should be a change of mindset, and just to, like I said, feminism is about equal rights. So equal rights, that's something that we should just strive for versus giving quotas. So I will go in circles. Jamie, what is your key speak?
Oh, this is going to be controversial, but I kind of have a love-hate relationship.
That's what we're here for.
With,
please.
With tech conferences. So I really, really enjoy getting together with my fellow colleagues. I find myself not even going to a lot of the talks anymore. Like, I just hang out and network with people, which is great. But there's a lot of things there that could be better. Just in terms of like can we get away from alcohol-centered socialized activities? Could we, maybe do a little better COVID precautions for people? So that would be my guess.
Awesome.
There's some parts that are good, there's some parts that are not great.
Yeah. Paul, what is your KISS choice?
And my KISS choice is this. So I'm 41, and I think the prevailing attitude among people older than me, at least maybe not everybody, but a majority, is that you should work a long time at one place and pay your dues there. And the prevailing attitude, or a majority for people younger than me, is screw that, pay me.
Yeah.
And I want to kiss the idea of screw that, pay me.
Yeah.
Because
awesome.
I certainly tried a little bit of that at a short period in my first part of my career of the work for a long time. And when I first job hopped, I realized how much I was getting royally screwed by my first company. Or by the company I worked for, I should say. And now somebody's going to look back and see what I'm talking about. But
I'll go and show Paul's LinkedIn profile.
Doesn't matter. Not going to work there again anyway. But this ties back to what I said earlier. Like, invest in yourself. If XYZ is going to give you 25% more dollars for your same 40 hours or whatever, go get paid. It is not your job to make sure that your company makes like the top 10 shareholders richer.
Yeah.
Screw that. Get paid.
Yeah. It's a good, great one. Yeah, I agree completely. So talking about Mary, for myself, I would like to nominate work from home.
Yes.
You took mine. Oh, jeez.
Oh, damn. More generally, work from everywhere, because it could be any place. And I mean, we talked about it before, and there have been some articles creeping around recently saying no, companies want people back in the office. No, folks, do not give in to that. Do not read that. Obviously sponsored by some commercial real estate developers. No, we're not going back to the office, not like it was before. That's end of story. Jamie, so sorry if I stole your nomination.
That's okay. I had two, so that was one of them. And the second one is semi-related. So I would marry pay transparency.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I say it's semi-related is because, unfortunately, we have some of these companies that are like, we're remote first, but also we pay on a geographic basis.
Yeah.
No. You have a title, and we pay you X dollars for said title.
Yeah. IBM did that, by the way, too. It was, and we found out like a few years later, we were like, we're getting screwed over people in New York City. And they're like, but their cost of living, but we don't care. Then let people work from home. Solves the issue. Yeah, sorry.
This is my soapbox issue, by the way. So if they're telling you their cost of living is higher, therefore they must get paid more, what they're really telling you is that we only believe you should have this level of quality of life.
Exactly.
For this role.
Yeah.
Excuse me, if I live somewhere cheaper, I made that choice for that reason.
Yeah.
So that more of my money could go to other things. That's none of your business.
How about you move your office from very expensive place and do not maybe support that culture? So it's a great great one. Thank you, Jamie. Paul, what's your same or alternative choice?
I'm trying to quickly come up with an alternative to that, because like that was my 100% thing. So let me try this. Let me marry the idea of repurposing office space to like other things, like housing or fun things.
Yeah.
Like I would love, like, housing would be very good, of course, but I would love like 10 times as many escape room event things, right?
Right.
Turn my old office into that. I would love it. Bring me. I'll do it. So repurposing.
That might make me come into the office. If you
exactly. In the repurposed office.
Or like, old school, arcades or whatever, just stuff like that. Like repurpose those old shitty office spaces that we shouldn't be holding on to anymore. Like let them go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna marry that idea.
Rip them down, build a park, make it happen.
Awesome. Love it. So, all right. So last choices for kill. For me, it's women in IT panels. And people frequently misunderstand this, like, what do you mean? We still need to keep talking about women in IT. Talking, yes. Panels, no. So, Jamie, what's your kill choice?
Oh gosh, I have so many thoughts on that. My kill choice is related to your Mary choice also. So I am a huge remote fan and advocate, and I would say that you have to be in the office X number of days thing, that would be my kill.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cop out, but literally that is like my biggest pet peeve is don't make me come into the office.
Yeah. Paul, what's your kill choice?
I would kill 5 days, 40 hours. I would. There have been times that I would be like, no, I'll work 4 days, 32 hours, pay me 80% of what you would have paid me. I'm fine with that. And less and less, right? That kind of arrangement is sadly not available.
That's
as
why we
much as
need
it
to
ought to
switch
be.
to hourly.
Yeah.
We need to switch to
Yeah,
hourly
that's
pay.
for sure. But like, I mean, I right now I like my job and I'm okay with 5 days, 40 hours. But like, if I wanted to, I should be able to be like, you know what, screw it, 4 days, 32 hours,
Yeah.
whatever, boom.
Company of one.
Yeah.
We gotta start setting our own.
Yeah.
This is how much I'm willing to offer you, and here's the price.
Yeah.
So I'm also, for the record, very much in favor of 4-day weeks. It's it's always tremendous when there is a nice long weekend. It's every time you see a choice. And I was talking to my kids the other day, he said the same thing. It's on Saturday, you're still like kind of happy because you have Sunday. But Sunday is pretty much not a fun day because you're thinking about
getting ready for Monday
already. Yeah. So you really need like an extra day there somewhere. So really. So really great choices, everyone. Thank you so much. So before we go, Jamie, anything that you would like to promote, like your new venture, any events, anything like that, books, I don't know, publications, please.
Yeah, no, I have a couple things going on. So one, my new company is called Phase Shift. I chose that name after many long conversations with my teenagers, of them throwing crazy names at me. But I chose that one because that really is what I believe community can do for companies of any size. It can help you really move forward in so many elements of your business. So if you are interested, feel free to give me a shout, Jamie at phaseshift.io, or just go to phaseshift.io and there's a contact link there. The other thing is I've finally started blogging regularly again. So my blog is called saltyavocado.dev.
Nice.
And the reason for that is because the avocado is like the developer advocate's little mascot, sort of.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And in the words of my teenagers, I am always very salty. So would love to have more subscribers there. And I'm really focused more on executives and getting executives on board with concepts that are intuitive to community people, but that we really have a hard time communicating. And so if you have a leader that you feel like needs to get up to speed, feel free to point them there as well.
Awesome.
I literally just pulled up your website. It looks nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I also subscribe to your newsletter and under the same name, Salty Avocado. Very, very nice publication. So yeah, and great, good luck to you, Jamie, with your new ventures. I hope and that they succeed and grow, which would be really great. And if anyone is listening, again, if you're interested in anything community related, please reach out to Jamie. She's a great expert and community advocate. And thank you so much, Jamie, for joining us today. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you both.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.